Hello, everyone. It's round 7.
Yep.
My goodness, time has flown by today. My name is Mike. I'm here with Alex, and we have some more Pokemon trading card game for you. Alex, how are you finding today so far?
I mean, despite the other, non-mentionable things that have happened, I've had a chance to go around during the rounds to actually see some of the decks, some of the players in action. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. We've had our little technical hiccup, but we're back. We're ready to give you more action as we now get to cast together once again, Mike.
What a delight.
Exactly.
What a delight.
Lots to look forward to here. And for this round, we've got, again, a very notable player that we've had on stream in previous events before, who had a bit of that innovation with that sort of water toolbox deck that he's played before as well. But this time he's gone for something a little bit more conventional.
Yeah, we'll be checking out those lists in a bit for you guys. But today we've looked at various different lists. We've had a lot of Lost Box. We've also had some Mew. In that last game, Lugia and Gardevoir. And that is just credit to how diverse the meta is right now. There's so many different decks that people can viably play and do well with. But Gardevoir, we just saw it, hasn't managed to get a top finish during this Scarlet and Violet block. So I wonder if this is going to be the event for it.
It could be. It's something that I also backed in, if we ever get a chance, hopefully to show you some of the graphics, the decks that we chose pre-tournament as well. It was a deck that definitely a Guardy believer. We've seen a lot of top players pick up the deck. Tord Reklev has obviously shone with the Gardevoir deck.
I mean, Tord Reklev just shines. He just walks around and there is light emitting from him as he walks around the hall. He is a shining player. Now, that's a fair point, though. We talk about the kind of people who pilot decks. Now, that's why Lost Box done well, is because a lot of the top players are choosing to play it. Do you think that's a big factor as to these decks and how successful they can be in winning tournaments?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of decision-making in both decks. Although you sort of just see Guardy just kind of draws cards, it's actually making the right discard options to actually be able to bring your deck to a certain point to be able to take the big knockouts where you need to. Lost Box, of course, a lot of players stick with it if they've already done particularly well. We saw Pedro earlier today, partially at least anyway, but he's been playing Sablezard for quite some time to a lot of top finishes. You get a lot of players like that just sort of sticking with what they know because it becomes muscle memory. You start making the right decisions on a consistent basis. You make fewer mistakes. Any sort of small mistakes even as you sort of progress through a tournament, and then that way it gives you the best opportunity to make it into day 2 and beyond. But just as we are discussing now, so as we mentioned, Carl Peters on the right-hand side there that we've brought for this game and this round up against Joe Bates, I believe, of the UK.
Yeah, so we'll be seeing which of those comes out on top, and another unique matchup here, another unique deck. We have seen Arceus already on stream, but it was paired up with Reggie Drago. A very fun matchup that was, but Arceus Giratina will be here against Lugia V-Star, which we just witnessed on the previous game. So we'll have a look at some of these achievements here. My goodness, this is when we start seeing the top of the top. Those when we see a lot of numbers on other people, you think, okay, they're good players, they're regular day 2s. But when you start seeing champions and finalists, that is great from Carl.
Yeah, Carl's a well-known player. Has been playing for a long time now. There you go, champion in German nationals in 2014, and then sort of progressing and still staying within the game, still staying at the top of the game as we head into game 1 now, and we're just sort of waiting for players just to kind of flip over their deck, see what their starters are. But we can have a quick look at their prize as well as the fist bump goes off. We do have 2 DTs on Carl's side. We do see Joe with the first draw, so he will be kicking us off.
Yeah, and this matchup is huge about the start. With any deck that has Judge and Path to the Peak in, you're always going to be looking to set up well whilst disrupting Lugia. So if Lugia cannot get that Summoning Star off early, then the match goes very in favor of its opponents. If it gets Summoning Star off in that first turn possible, then it's going to be going in favor of the Lugia most likely. So we'll be seeing Carl trying to get a double turbo energy onto that Arceus, as mentioned, to our prized. There are another 2 in the deck, but that would be the dream start. And then hopefully, if possible, try and get a Path to the Peak and a Judge. But Arceus has so many simple tasks to do at the start without very much draw, and that is asking quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely does, as we do see Joe with the first capturing Aroma, just double checking his prizes, was a tail, so we'll be aiming to get that basic Pokemon when you flip tails. Heads, it will be an evolution Pokemon, of course. But Joe's list he's taken an interesting direction with it. He's playing the double collapse, which is great against decks like Lost Box. But it's also not playing the Pumpkaboo. Now, with the increase of decks like Mew, Fusion particularly, and things like that, you know, that kind of lower opportunity for more path decks, he's gone for the additional Stadium Mount instead of the Pumpkaboo, which would give him an opportunity to get out of path lock.
We saw Pumpkaboo used effectively in the last game against Gardevoir to get rid of the Temple of Sinnoh, so it is a huge card. The only downside of having a Pokemon be your out to stadiums is you can start it sometimes, which isn't ideal. You might discard it early on, which is also not ideal. And so, you know, it's quite tough, but then there is so many ways to find it with the Ultra Balls and through natural draw or capturing Aromas. So a nice little include normally, but Joe opting to go around it, and we're just seeing that first turn trying to get rid of some Archeops, but no, nothing discarded this turn. We're looking to do so next one.
Yeah, as we pass over the car with all of those sort of gold cards there, the Plasma Freeze Ultra Ball hitting the field. Just going to be looking to try and begin setting up his board, of course. Not only does he need to begin trying to get that DT where possible, but, you know, as we saw with the World Championships in London, play Bibarel and just try and win as much as you can. But we do just see the manual attachment of the Psychic Energy and a switch and into the Judge, immediately just trying to limit what Joe is able to do on his turn. Exactly what this deck tries to do usually. And if you can get a path down in as well, you know, as long as he's got a second turn, a second set of cards to be able to continue into his second turn, this will be ideal for Carl.
Yeah, 4 Judge, 4 Path. We know the angle that Carl's going for. Inspired by Mew VMAX to go down as much disruption as possible. Arceus can be a bit clunky at times. It can struggle to be consistent in those early turns, but once it's set up, especially with the Bibarel in play, it can be mighty threatening into that end game and very hard to knock out. And on the other side, this is where we're wondering, what did Joe get off of that Judge? There is a Mesagoza.
Big. He's got
a
research as well, so just go straight into a new fresh hand of 7. Mesagoza waiting ready. I was surprised he might not have gone for it early. Maybe could have got one of those Archeops in, because that would have guaranteed maybe one into the discard if he hits that heads. But does find a Lugia V-Star here, but I'm not too sure there's too many options other than that. Here comes a Mesagoza. It's a flip. It's a heads. He does hit the 4, but what does he go for here at this moment in time? He can't use Read the Wind anymore. Just try and look at the options that are available to him. Does look like he takes the Archeops to put into hand. I didn't see an Ultra Ball, but I could be mistaken.
We'll see what happens there. As you mentioned, Read the Wind could have been an option. Maybe there is a way to discard it in the hand, and that could go for the Archeops here. We'll see. This is a key stage of the game. As we mentioned before, it is a battle for who sets up first, and there is no setup there, so it gives a turn back to Carl. Now Carl has also access to that Mesagoza, and will be able to potentially get an Arceus V-Star. No, a Tails there.
Yeah, not ideal for Carl there. Carl does have the Escape Rope and another Energy and an Ultra Ball, so can actually go into something like the Bibarel as well, the barrel, so he can continue drawing cards. Does get the V-Star so that he can use Starbirth, of course. Lots of options here at the moment, and has a Nest Ball. We'll be looking to use that Starbirth to get into the active spot, get the DT attached, and just start swinging away. And also eyeing up at some stage, trying to get that path, because that Mesagoza is just one of those only 4 outs that Joe has, and he will have to try and find a way to dig for it.
Yeah, definitely getting the double turbo energy here. It's just, what's the other option? There's lots of things to go for. Could go for a Bibarel to set that up and start drawing. Could also go for a Path of the Peak to disrupt. Could also go for a Judge. Lots of different things that are available, so we'll see what the other card is, but the double turbo energy is the guaranteed first.
Looks like a Judge there, and I think that's pretty smart from Carl. You've seen Joe still has plenty of cards in hand after that research as well. We'll just be then able to continue hoping to see cards himself. If he took the path, he would then be just down to a sort of 0-card hand, and that's not ideal. Bibarel is obviously a great option, but this Judge, I think, just also limits, once again, a second back-to-back Judge, sorry, and really just kind of put himself in a stronger position. Doesn't look like he hit the path, though.
No, but we'll be able to get the attack off this turn and start powering up that Giratina. Maybe you would want an Arceus down to try and power that up as well, so we can chain a few Arceus.
You can see some facial expressions from Carl a moment ago where he was just like, just missed a slight trick there in my deck. But, you know, he's the one who's applying pressure first with this first Trinity Nova shortly. But still a couple of other options. There's the Nest Ball. Knowing he's up against, you know, a deck like Lugia, which doesn't have that sort of sniping ability, does have the option to go for something like Squovets or further Barrels, which is fantastic. And there is the Trinity Nova announcement, 180 damage and a chance to power up 2 of his V Pokemon on his bench there.
Yeah, and both those Bidoof are the Crown Zenith Bidoof, so they do have the bench barrier as well.
Yep.
So it's definitely a stable board state coming soon for Carl here. Hoping that Judge has done enough, but we did see a Burnett, Professor Burnett in Joe's hand, which would allow for those Archeops to be attained and put into the discard pile, as well as the Summoning Star available, as there's no path in play. And maybe off the Mesagoza, an attacker is found, so we'll see what happens here. It's a Tails. And so the Professor Burnett could be big here, just guaranteeing those Archeops discard.
This is before Path has been able to come in play, so instantly available to start using an attacker, start swinging back, or at least go into another attacker maybe to try and prevent that Lugia V-Star going down for 2 easy prizes. And I've also apologized, Carl Peters is not playing the Squirvet that we've seen so lovingly with the Nest Dash ability. Just going with a double Bibarel line and 2 Drapion Vs.
And there's the one of the Bibarel in the prizes there, so we'll only get access to one of them at this stage, but you know, there's always a chance to seize it towards the end, and you know, having a Bidoof down, it isn't that bad. As we mentioned, it doesn't really get threatened too much in this matchup because it's going to be more about the Vs and which Vs get taken out at what stage for both players. Lugia looking to try and get a powerful attacker coming through at some point, and that's going to be the next step. What attacker do you go for? That double turbo energy attachment earlier could be vital now because it will allow for an easy retreat, and so we're going to see that Urshifu V coming down. Wasn't in the previous Lugia list that we got to see on stream, but it will be here, and that can attack as the V itself to get a knockout here on Arceus.
Yeah, one of those few Pokemon which doesn't require too many energies to be able to take a massive KO. That Impact Blow dealing 180 damage, of course, then buffed with those single strike energy and hitting for weakness. He will be taking the first knockout of this round, and here we go. So he's now actually put pressure straight back on Carl's side of the field because Carl has powered up that Arceus V, but still needs an Arceus V-Star, and that's an opportunity to instantly grab it back.
Yeah, might be looking to get the barrel at this stage as well to try and set up a bit more draw, and we'll see what comes out here. I think there was an Arceus V-Star in hand as well.
Okay,
so
okay.
we'll have that access to that. But if they can get the attack on the Lugia here, that would open up a avenue to keep up with the prize trade, but does also need to start thinking about disruption too.
Yeah, I mean, he ideally probably wouldn't want to keep allowing this Urshifu V to sort of maybe evolve up and maybe take further knockouts by evolving up to that VMAX with its sort of incredible amounts of damage that it can do. But being able to take 4 prizes and potentially only give up the 3 might be something, a line of play that Joe may go for.
Yeah, and with Arceus Giratina, we've seen a varying amount of damage modifying tools. We've seen 2 Choice Belt, we've seen a Choice Belt and a Cleansing Gloves to help in the God of War EX matchup. On this occasion, there is just the 1 Choice Belt.
Does have the Choice Belt already though, so and gets the V-Guard energy attached, so we'll just be able to, with the Choice Belt, take the knockout there. Instant respond from Carl as Joe just wants to confirm the Trinity Nova targets and then gets the additional draw from that gift energy. I
was surprised he's able to find that Choice Belt so well. You know, only one of them in the deck. Finding that off of the Bibarel, huge value from Bibarel right there, and knocking out the Urshifu at this stage sets up a much tougher time for Joe. I honestly didn't expect him to get that. I thought it was going to be so tough for him to find that Choice Belt.
I guess it's one of those things where that's why Carl's went for that line of play. You know, he has the opportunity to power up some of the Giratina as well, but with that additional Trinity Nova, just being able to deal the additional damage, it's such a good attacker if it's able to take out Joe's one of maybe Lugia's typical fighting Pokemon that they play. Joe's not playing the Stonjourner, which we have seen in a number of lists as well. Maybe not really respecting Arceus as much because of the way the metagame has currently been evolving, with Mew suddenly coming up to the fore. So playing that single strike Yveltal instead. As Joe here has to try and navigate this turn, and that he can hope to try and retaliates somehow. It does eye up that Tyranitar.
Interesting now, if we look back at that Urshifu, was the V-Guard the better option there? Because the V-Guard would have guaranteed the survival from the Arceus, but then the gift allows for more longevity here as you get to draw into it. Which is the better option there?
I think with Lugia, sometimes you do just happen to end up with a hand where you don't really have many options. And if Joe's sort of identified that he didn't really have another way to get another attacker out, he does kind of have to just go for perhaps that gift energy to just kind of, you know, dig him out of a bit of a poorly dug hole. But at the same time, this is now giving him a great position, has targeted down with that boss, that Giratina V on the bench as well, does have the Tyranitar fully powered up, does have the retreat on the Archeops in the active spot. So Joe here again, just kind of keeping up with the prize race and pushing himself further and closer to the win here, as he also uses that urn to recover 2 more energies back to the deck.
And that's exactly it now. Tyranitar is a very bulky attacker in the current format. 230 hit points plus a V-Guard energy puts it out of range of an Arceus. So it's going to be tough here. If that Giratina V-Star goes down, it's going to make it very tricky now for Carl to keep up with this back and forth trade, 2 prizes each. And this is where Tyranitar's discards could come in. We'll be watching to see what they're going to be. Tyranitar going to attack into the Giratina V-Star. What are the 4 cards? An Urn, big card there. Yveltal, Archeops, and Archeops.
Wow, okay. Not too bad considering he's also chucked back in already 2 single strike energies, of course. So currently dealing 240 damage, and with that single strike crush, well, extra with the impacts also attached as well. Or single strike energy attached as well. Just a great turn. Now he's so far ahead. It's very difficult to take it down because, as you mentioned, the V-Guard energy protecting it by a further 30 damage less that it could take from other opposing few Pokemon. Carl, at this stage, not really needing to find those paths, but unfortunately, that early few turns where the couple of judges where he wasn't able to pull out really just didn't slow Joe down enough.
Exactly, and we can see that Carl asked some questions, asked, can you knock out this Arceus with the V-Guard energy on it? And Joe responded by saying, I'll gust around it. And then now we're seeing a similar kind of thing here. Can you deal with this situation I'm presenting you? I'm going to take out that Lugia V-Star. Maybe not, he's just going to pass here. So just leaving a barrel in the active spot. Maybe looking to try and run Joe out of energy here. We do see 2 prized. I'm not quite sure on the energy counts that have been discarded at this stage. You know, this is where we're talking about the Urn of Vitality being discarded. That could be vital. There are 4 in the deck. So just a few questions being asked here from Carl, knowing that giving up a 1 prizer, not too scary at this stage, but there, that's going to be huge, as you see.
That's
the boss's orders,
attack.
A lot of damage right there from the Tyranitar. It's going to get the knockout on the Arceus, and we're going to be going into game 2 shortly. Joe, 2 powerful Tyranitar, 2 powerful Arceus goes down.
Yeah, 2 big attackers there, being able to take all 6 prizes. For Joe, that single strike Urshifu taking the early 2 prizes without Carl able to get that path of the peak to the in play. Sorry. And then, of course, yeah, Joe been able to take down this game now with that final attack from his massive Tyranitar with all those energies attached.
Yeah, and we saw that swing turn potentially back in favor of Arceus Giratina, where the Arceus had to get a choice belt, knock out the Urshifu in the active spot, but realistically there's just too much damage output from Lugia to see that Tyranitar come up and return the knockout, and as we saw, it was very well judged to do it on the Giratina, the biggest threat, the one that can also knock out back. And we saw it was a lot of boss's orders. Boss's orders the MVP of that game.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things with Lugia decks. You know, you always want to be targeting down those 2 prizes because once you get set up, once you get going, it's a very hard train to stop. You know, he's just going to be barraging through whichever Pokemon's in the active spot, whether it's hitting for weakness or just hitting for massive amounts of damage like that Tyranitar has been able to do so.
Yeah, I've had a few of my friends who aren't too familiar with the game. When you first introduce them to boss's orders, they sort of go, is that it? Is that all it does? Just gets 1 Pokemon from their bench into the active spot.
Oh.
And little do they know how important that can be on those turns, how much power it can give you in those turns. And I think we could see it just there, exactly why that was the case. It could be good for disruption, it could be good for knockouts, and it can be good to target the exact Pokemon you want to take out. And we'll see who starts off strong here. Carl, if he goes first, will be able to get the V-Star off from the Arceus, the Starbirth, and be able to start thinking about pathing his opponents. So in a good spot to start with.
Yeah, it does have to start the Giratina V, though. Wants to get the Arceus somewhere, but
Oh
it's not
no,
been able
that's
to.
not what you want to
Yeah.
see.
That's not ideal from
Oh,
your side.
double
And double
Archeops
Arceus.
discarded.
And here we go from Joe's side of the board. I mean, he's just, of course, doing everything correct, everything, take his time with it, make sure he knows what his prizes are, but he's staring down at the moment, a pretty helpless Giratina in the active spot. And got to be feeling pretty good for yourself. He will have to get a Lugia from this moment here with his Ultra Ball, unless he has it already in hand, and maybe can start prepping the next turns. But yeah, there's a little cheeky smile from Joe as he's just double checking what is prize, and nothing really too crazy at all.
Oh, this is a beautiful start here for Joe. This is the dream start to see from his point of view, and this is such an important game for them as well to ease their nerves for the rest of the day. It is round 7, so still plenty of time to get those 19 points to make day 2, but to go 6-1-0 at this stage, you're then in a very comfortable position where if you're tired and you don't want to play anymore, you can ID potentially, and if you're not, you're thinking about getting as many wins as ready for the next day. And so we'll see Joe here confidently taking on game 2. Kyle helplessly waiting to hope that the turn isn't as strong as it's currently looking.
Yeah, I'm hoping to try and utilize a supporter on his next turn, just to kind of get his game plan at least going in some way, shape or form right now, as Joe just passes after benching the Lugia. All he needs to do, really. And Carl's just kind of looking at his hand and has a number of energies there. And doesn't look like much else.
Oh,
Is that a boss in hand as well?
He needs a judge here because there is a Lugia V-Star in Joe's hand there, so would be able to evolve that Lugia. So he's going to boss the Lugia.
Try and limit the potential for a big, easy KO from the Tyranitar. Now has to find a retreat way out of that Lugia, potentially as well. Just the attachment there to the Giratina V. He's just considering, is that another V-Star in hand? He is just going to use Giratina's first attack, which does look at the top 4 cards.
The old Abyss Seeking.
Yep, that Abyss Seeking. Not something you typically see too often, as he does get a chance to put 2 further cards into his hand and Lost Zone 2 others. And there goes an Arceus V. So it must be another one there somewhere.
Oh dear.
V-Star straight down from Joe as it passes back over. The Archeops out on the field with the V-Star ability used. Primal Turbo instantly activated as it's looking like it's going to go to the active. Is there enough energy to be able to retreat the active? And there it is. Doesn't need to use the DTE. The 2 Primal Turbos. Enough damage to take out that Giratina V. And Joe Bates will be our winner for round 7.
That look from Joe, I have been gifted a game 2 there. Every deck can do it, but no deck is quite as good at struggling turn 1 as Arceus decks. We mentioned how good Arceus is once it's set up with the disruption of the path and the judge, but if you have turn 1s like that, there's not a huge amount you can do, and Lugia is consistent at getting the Archeops out. It's just whether it consistently does it every single game, and so far on stream it has.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be an Archeops usually in play, at least one.
At least one.
You know, you hope for the second, but Joe has been able to sort of pilot that as well as he could, and I guess, you know, ignoring game 2, game 1, having to be barraged with a couple of judges and still be able to pull out the Archeops and then take the dub is fantastic to see. You know, it's great to see Lugia do well as well, considering it did have that kind of soft reset after the rotation, just prior to EUIC, of course, but we can still see just how strong that concept is.
Yeah, I think Arceus struggles going second into Lugia if Lugia sets up well, and then equally Arceus struggles when going first with a Giratina, no attachment on an Arceus. Those are the 2 worst case scenarios which we saw, because even when both players set up perfectly and got everything they needed, I guess the only thing the Arceus Giratina list could have done is disrupt a bit more, but even then that's asking a lot of a deck that doesn't have particularly good draw. Needs to come off of that judge. And even then it disrupts himself, the Starbirth. So that is a tough old matchup, and I think we can see why there. And Arceus Giratina, one of the best decks in the format right now at beating everything. Its biggest challenge is itself.
Yeah, I mean, Arceus Giratina has been able to take down multiple events in recent times. Just before this little period of Fusion Mu, of course, I think it's on one weekend it took down 2 tournaments. And, you know, these players are able to just pilot to a particular way just to give them maximum opportunity and just ask the questions of your opponent is, can you get out of this judge path lock? And if you can't, well, I'm just going to keep swinging into you, taking the prizes I need, and that's how I'm going to win most of my games. So he's already 5 rounds, in, and having now 5-2, still a great opportunity to make it into day 2 as well, 2 more rounds. But Joe is going to be feeling pretty confident and feeling pretty good about himself that he can lock a spot into day 2.
Yeah, Lugia feels good when it's playing all the cards right as well. So both decks relying on a little bit of draw, a little bit of rolling the right dice with the Mesagoza, and the capturing Aroma can be quite important. But Lugia, a strong deck, and honestly, I think Lugia is only going to get stronger in the future. So if you like Lugia as a Pokemon, make sure to start learning that deck right now. But the difference we've seen, we saw a game just beforehand and we saw it just there. Lugia having the single strike Urshifu in this build that we just saw, and it was so key against Arceus there. What do you think is more important right now for Lugia in terms of attackers? Having those big VMAXs like Duraludon and the Urshifu that lower the consistency, or focusing on consistency and removing those options?
I think in going into this meta, this is how Lugia's always had to evolve a little bit, because we saw at EUIC, I believe, where we saw the Duraludon VMAX really come to the fore and and push itself in such a good position against other sort of mirrors and other sort of cute decks which maybe played DTEs and so on. And then the Urshifu was a bit of a response into that, wasn't it? So being able to take larger KOs, Gudra also having a massive showing at EUIC, that Urshifu is also able to sort of just stretch over that rolling eye and attack. I think the bear is probably the one direction a lot of players tend to go for nowadays, because it does have that utility.
Shay will tell you straight away, get Urshifu VMAX in there. We had a little group session the other day where everyone said their favorite Pokemon, and Shay said Urshifu VMAX.
Yeah, we did.
We were just naming Pokemon, Shay. You don't need to mention the card specifically. He loves that card.
Yeah.
I think he really enjoys the big hitting. And like you said, Gudra, it's made Gudra less effective, because Gudra's strongest matchup was Lugia for a while. Now that the bear is around.
Yep.
So do you know what? When I see matches like that and they finish quickly, I'm always intrigued to hear from the players and find out what they're thinking, because they're probably as shocked as we are. So let's find out.
All right then, so now we are joined with Joe, our winner there, getting himself to a 6-1 record. First of all, talk to the people how you feel now in this scenario.
It's a weird one. I've never been 6-1 before. I've always been winning and then lose it and then cry more. So it's good. It's good. I like it.
So first time being in this scenario. Talk to us about your season. How is your season going? Because I know we had a little chat off camera and it's getting to the serious part of the season now.
So it started fine. I got 40 points at Lille. Okay, sure, whatever. It's on curve. And then I did every European regional and special event and didn't get points. I have no money. So 3 weeks ago, I was still on 40 points, and then I got 1-2-8 at Malmo, cup win. Cup win, 1-2-8 at Malmo, challenge win here. So the elusive Q4 invite, hopefully.
The Q4 invite, just making it as interesting as possible for yourself, keeping it on the toes there. Talk to us about your deck choice. Why did you choose Lugia for this event?
I don't want to think. So, yeah, no, I could have played Mew, could have played a bunch of other stuff. My friend, Daniel, who was on stream before, he's on Lost Box quite hard. Had I had more time, I feel like I probably would have pivoted that. I'm glad I didn't, luckily. Lost Box seems very well positioned, and Lugia can lose to going second against Guardi, which I don't like, and it can lose to Lost Box if they're not dead drawing. It's, yeah, a bit scared of that, but I'm happy. I'm happy. You can always win a lot of losses. So.
Yeah, that's what I find with Lugia. Like, it might not have, the greatest of matchups across the board, but you can have a game against anything, right? And then if you get that turn 2 Archeops bubble, it's a silly ability in it, Primal Turbo. It's silly, so
losing Judge Kragalanch, hit your pieces. Yeah.
Or if you don't hit your pieces, like read the win turn 3. Talk to us about your list. Were there any sort of 61st or 62nd cards?
There's definitely a couple. It's kind of hard to say. I would have liked a penny, but Thornton's fine.
I'm Thornton as well, let's go. Nice. I'm Team Thornton.
I'd like to win the mirror, so yeah.
There's nothing better than like discarding a good attacker, right? Like maybe your Vettel or Stone Journ or whatever, and your opponent thinks, I've got away with it. And you're like, lol, no. So talk to us now. So you said you're on about, what, 140 CP, I believe?
145 before today.
145. So. Fingers crossed, you know, we should be getting a day 2. What's your feeling moving forward into like a day 2 scenario?
Oh, it's hard because with day 2 it tends to be if the deck shouldn't win the matchup, it won't. So I need to win a lot of coin flips. I think this is the first or second coin flip I've won today. So first game I've actually flipped heads on Mesagoza as well. But so it'll be a lot of if I flip heads and you're on Guardi, I win the game. Hopefully, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm very scared of Guardi right now.
Well, let's all keep our fingers crossed there for Joe. Flip heads, win Guardi. I'm cheering for you, my friend, fellow Lugia player. Hopefully you can close out your invite, maybe even tomorrow if all things go well, maybe.
The plan is to win, so like...
The plan is to win. You heard it here first, everyone. We're going to be doing a winner's interview with Joey tomorrow after he's won the finals. Until then, no, we are going to have to have a little break. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So we're going to have a couple videos and we'll get back to our next round as soon as possible.